All right, welcome to this explainer. Today, we are diving into a really fascinating, relentlessly grounded philosophy drawn straight from Matthew McConaughey. We're going to unpack a framework that's specifically designed to yank us out of hesitation, get us past our doubts, and push us straight into committed, deliberate action. It's really all about fundamentally changing how we approach our goals, how we handle our failures, and ultimately how we figure out who we actually are. So let's just set the stakes right out of the gate with this incredibly powerful thought. If you're going to do it, do it. McConaughey points out that so many of us completely overleverage our decisions. We tell ourselves, well, I think I'll try it out, and we just kind of dip a toe in the water. But the absolute rule here is simple: no dipping a toe. If you want to try it out in your head beforehand, hey, that's fine. But when it is actually time to go, you dive, you finish the thing, and you come out the other side with total, absolute commitment.
Which brings us to our first core pillar today: go all in, and the sheer danger of half-assing.
Look, a lot of us are trapped in this paralyzing, honestly exhausting state of giving just slightly less than our full effort. Just think about the stark contrast between these two ways of living. When you fully succeed or fully fail at something, it's definitive, right? You have closure. You can look in the mirror and honestly say, I went all the way, I found out, and man, that ain't for me. Or, you're damn right, that is for me. But on the flip side, half-assing, that is an agonizing purgatory. It's that perpetual what if that literally keeps you up at night, because when you half-ass something, you genuinely don't know whether you truly failed or succeeded. You're left with zero closure.
So how do we fix that? Well, McConaughey offers this brilliant kind of counterintuitive advice: be full of yourself. Now, usually if someone says you're full of yourself, it's a huge insult, but his response to that is, well, who else am I supposed to be full of? We actually need to be more full of ourselves. We have to study ourselves, hold ourselves to task. We need to be the ones cracking the whip on our own backsides when we get out of line, but we also have to properly claim our victories. We need to be able to look in the mirror, own what we just pulled off, and say, good job. That's what you wanted, and that's exactly what you got.
And honestly, having that level of self-awareness naturally pushes us right into our second pillar: discover who you are not, through the elimination method.
We've all faced that famously daunting, almost impossible task of trying to find yourself. But this framework flips that entire concept on its head and turns it into sheer mathematics. Because going out and blindly searching for your true self from scratch, that's incredibly difficult. But acknowledging what you don't know you want and identifying what you definitely do not want, that gives you instant leverage. It is a hell of a lot easier to eliminate the negatives, just getting rid of the nonsense and the toxic habits in your life, than it is to just conjure up your true identity out of thin air. By simply subtracting who you are not, sheer math dictates that you're going to naturally gravitate toward what actually feeds you and who you truly are.
Now, of course, as we start eliminating things and taking risks, we are going to face setbacks. And that brings us to our third pillar: alchemize your failures by flipping the script.
This is all about exploring our really strange relationship with self-criticism. It's actually wild to think about how differently we react to our own outcomes. Think about it. When we fail, our typical reaction is to just wallow, over-introspect, and completely harass ourselves. We'll happily give someone else a gentle pat on the back when they mess up, but we give ourselves a harsh kick on the way out the door. A way better approach is to simply own it, make your amends, and move on. But here's the real kicker. When we succeed, we usually just give ourselves a gentle little pat on the back and take it completely for granted. McConaughey challenges us to actively deconstruct our successes instead. Try to bottle the science of why things went right. Note your habits. Find the consistencies in your health, your faith, your relationships, and use that actual data to engineer a lot less pain for yourself in the future.
And look, when you're in the absolute thick of a failure or a really tough time, you have to anchor yourself to this perspective. Life's the ironic tragedy, lived forward, but only makes sense in reverse. Because when we look back at our lives, we can always connect the dots. It's practically scientific. What felt like this agonizing, deeply painful end when we were living through it was very often just the incredibly necessary beginning of something else.
But to get to the other side of that mystery, we actually have to endure. That's pillar number 4, embrace the process and start breaking a sweat. This is all about the gritty reality of hustle, endurance, elbow grease, and willingly paying the price for the things that we want in life. Choosing the hard path and breaking a proverbial sweat, whether that's mentally or physically, it hardwires these undeniable benefits directly into our DNA. We always remember the stuff we actively earn far more than what somebody just hands us for free.
Putting in the work gives us this deep gratification at the end of the day. It builds personal significance, deeply earned confidence, genuine resilience, and a truly healthy optimism, simply because we know we've worked for something before and we actually achieved it.
But to reap any of those benefits, we have to take action. Let's contrast two very different mindsets here. On one hand, you have the paralyzing fear of waiting for the perfect path. Say you lose a job, and you refuse to take a new one because the salary is a bit lower, and you're just waiting for the perfect fit. Suddenly, you blink and you've missed a decade stuck in total inaction. But on the other hand, there is immense value in simply committing to a choice. You just dive in. Even if it's not perfect, you build something through the day, you build momentum, and you embrace that delayed gratification. And who knows, that unexpected path might lead to something paying you 5 times more doing something you absolutely love. The key here is you just have to make a choice and commit to it. And all of this forward momentum builds towards our fifth and final pillar: chase your future self with Immortal Finish Lines. But before we reach those goals, let's just pause for a second and ask a really hard question. Why do we choke at the finish line? Seriously, think about it. Why do we fumble at the goal line? Why do we get a brain freeze on an exam we were totally prepared for, or randomly forget the punchline during a massive speech? Why is it that when life gets incredibly, unbelievably good, we tense up and ask ourselves, wait, do I actually deserve this? Well, we choke because we create what's called a fictitious ceiling. This is an entirely self-imposed restriction, basically a roof we just build right over our own expectations. We mistakenly believe that a moment has gotten too big for us, or that the success is just too good to be true. And suddenly, we start acting like victims who don't deserve the blue ribbons, the great ideas, or the euphoric bliss that we have actively earned. So how do we break through that ceiling? We need a massive mindset shift. And here it is. The approach is the destination. If we just stay within ourselves, stay in the process, and find our joy in the actual doing of the task, we never choke. Why? Because we aren't constantly looking up at the clock. We aren't watching ourselves on the jumbotron performing the act. We are just in the approach, and therefore, we are never actually finished. It's like Bo Jackson running over the goal line, right through the end zone and straight up the tunnel. You just don't stop at the line. And that actually brings us to a very specific, very significant number: 10. McConaughey shares this incredible anecdote about being asked who his hero was. After giving it a lot of thought, he realized his hero was himself, but exactly 10 years away. When he turned 25, the person asked if he was his hero yet, and he said, "Not even close, because my hero is me at 35. It's this continuously moving target. He will never attain it. He will never actually reach his hero, and that is perfectly fine, because it guarantees he always has someone to keep chasing." Which brings us to the ultimate conclusion of this entire philosophy. We are always on the way. You know, the greatest marksmen and snipers in the world, they don't aim directly at the target. They aim on the other side of the target. We always do our best when our reach continually exceeds our grasp. When we finally take the lid off those man-made roofs and set immortal finish lines, the race is beautifully never over. The adventure literally never ends. So, as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with one final provocative question to hopefully push you right out of any lingering hesitation. What are you committing to today? The time for half-assing is over. The time for waiting on the perfect path, it's completely gone. It's time to eliminate who you are not, embrace the sweat of the process, and dive all in. Thanks so much for joining me today, and hey, keep chasing that future self.